Hello, and welcome to another episode of Crossroaders in Ghana. This is Megan speaking. Happy to have all of you listening. Today we're going to be talking all about volunteering, the challenges, the benefits, and what motivates us to volunteer. So, as I said, this is Megan, and I'm here with Stephanie and Rafia, and we are going to be chatting together today. So I'll start by talking a bit about my experience with volunteering here in Ghana. This is my second mandate with Crossroads International. Very happy to be a part of Crossroads. And the process for me getting joined with Crossroads, I think, is not the conventional way that people usually become a volunteer under Crossroads. So initially, I actually was a volunteer with a different organization, and that was only supposed to be 3 months. 3 months here in Tamale in Ghana. And after those 3 months, I knew I needed to stay in Tamale. I knew my time wasn't done. And for me, it was really important to stay longer because I felt like those first 3 months were just the beginning of me actually understanding and getting a taste of what Tamale was all about. There's so much that goes into adapting yourself into a new environment, and those 3 months were really vital for me to actually become comfortable. And so I felt like, no, there's so much more work to be done and so much more I can add to the volunteering that I'm doing, that now I have the context and better understanding with these first 3 months that I want to stay. So I actually just asked our partner organization that I was paired with if I could stay a little bit longer and just volunteer, work from home, try and find ways that I can stay, essentially. And miraculously, on a day that I had left my laptop charger at the office and I wasn't even supposed to be there, I had come back to pick up my laptop charger and I ran into Stephanie, who was there visiting a different volunteer, facilitating more of the Crossroads things. And I remember her asking me why I'm here, what I'm doing. What are you doing here? And she was like, you're just here alone. You're just here volunteering. And I explained myself, I explained my situation, and she essentially said to me, listen, if you want to continue doing what you're doing, I'm sure Crossroads has a spot for you. Send me a resume and let's see what we can do. And literally within, I think, 24 hours, emails were sent back and forth, and we had the discussions to say, okay, let's sign you on to be a Crossroader, and you can continue to do the work you want to do, but you'll just be supported by us, which was amazing for me. So I don't know, Stephanie, if you have anything to add to that experience.
Okay, I think before we get into Megan's, I think for me, my volunteer experience started with Crossroads in 2021, even before I met Megan. Mm-hmm. So when I was in the it was second year university. At that time, it was Ryerson, but now it's called Toronto Metropolitan University. Yes, so they've changed their name completely. But back when I was there, it was called Ryerson University. And for the social work program, you get to do your placement or practicum third and fourth year. But I wanted to do international developments because I have always wanted to come back to Ghana and work. So I came to Kumasi actually at the Komfanoche Teaching Hospital because they have a social welfare program. So I found out about it, sent emails, made phone calls, and I finally came down to do that. And I loved, just like Megan was saying, I enjoyed the work that I was doing, interacting with people, and just being supportive and helpful. So I did that for, I believe it was 4 months, and then I went back to school, graduated, just continued working, and then I came down to visit family, and I've always loved Ghana. So COVID happened, and I was in Ghana when COVID happened, and then somehow I found out about Crossroads, and I applied right away. And I've been here ever since. So I started off as the gender specialist with the Human Rights Advocacy Center, and then later on was supporting their legal aid clinic. then I became the volunteer support advisor at Crossroads. So that's how I met Meghan. So I was in Tamale, as she mentioned, supporting our other volunteers because that's my role. And then I met her, and she really wanted to stay in Ghana. I was like, well, I mean, that's wonderful. And we were recruiting at that time, so I quickly made it happen so she can stay. And it's been great having her here. So I think volunteering in Ghana has been a great experience, meeting wonderful people, and yeah, so I hope that answers your question or what you wanted to know. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I think although Rafia is not a volunteer under Crossroads, she also started out as a volunteer, and she's done a lot of volunteering before she came into her role here at Songtaba. So I'll let her speak a bit to her experience of volunteering and transitioning into a staff here. So Rafia.
Yeah. Volunteering is, how would I put it? It was just, it didn't call me. I think I looked for it because I think I mentioned it once that I fell in love with Hajia on TV because I've always wanted to do something, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know where to go. I didn't even know any NGO. I didn't know anybody who worked in any NGO because I didn't school here. And so when I came back from school, I did my national service at the teaching hospital. And I just liked being of help. So even when COVID hit and they told a lot of the service personnel to go home, I was like, I would still work if you would allow me. So I think that's where my volunteerism started. So I was at TTH, that's Tamale Teaching Hospital. And then I happened to see Hajia on TV once. She was talking about the work Songtaba does, and I was like, oh, and it's right, like it's not far from my house. So I was like, I would love to help if they would have me. So I came here, I just walked in, and I was like, hey, I can do this. I would love to help. And so they were like, oh, okay, that's nice. Okay, so maybe come back this day. And so I came back, I spoke with Hajia. I told her exactly why I came. I saw her on TV, and I would love to help if they have anything for me to do. I don't even have to get paid. So she was like, oh, that's nice. And she introduced me to the team, and then I came back. And so I just started out as just sitting around if they had like anything to print, anything to type. And then so I kept waiting for them to take me to the communities because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to talk to young people. And so I got the opportunity. Mr. Mohammed started, he's our institutional Jesse. He's our Jesse manager. So he started taking me on community outreach programs, and I was observing how he would talk, how he would engage people in the community. And then little by little, I started doing it on my own. And then we had more service personnel, and then I was more experienced than them. So I was kind of also a volunteer support officer. Yeah. So, and then I think years later, I think I paused in 2023 to go to school to get my master's, and then I came back and then I applied for they were recruiting then, so I applied for a position and I got it.
You know what, that's actually a really nice story to hear. I didn't know you were a volunteer. I just thought you were a staff but you're doing so well. And I think it's nice to hear that you're volunteering because I don't hear that a lot in the Ghanaian community in Ghana. A lot of people just want jobs. They don't really like it when you ask them to volunteer, but then volunteering can lead to employment in many situations. So I think it's nice to hear that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of volunteering is that you can come in kind of fresh without a lot of pressure and without a lot of expectations, so to speak, and you're just there to really learn. And that's what I tell everyone. Yes, I'm here with my own tools, my own skills to offer and to support, but really I take it as a learning opportunity, and I'm here to just try and absorb as much as I possibly can that will help better my career in the future. So I think volunteering can, and unpaid internships, those kinds of things can kind of get a bad rep sometimes, but I feel like it's been vital for me to boost my career and build more of my skills. Okay, so let's move on to moving from Canada to Ghana.
Yeah.
I feel like I'll let Steph start because her experience is probably quite different than mine, being Ghanaian, Canadian, growing up primarily in Canada, but then coming back home, so to speak. How has that been for you?
Okay, so I think, like I mentioned before, I had always wanted to come back to Ghana. So it was always at the back of my mind that I wanted to move back and just work in the community as a social worker. So I was more interested in community work, so programming, community projects, policy, and so I started volunteering. And I believe it was a friend of mine who sent me the Crossroads mandate post. Like, it's not a job posting, but I would just say volunteer mandate posting. And I saw different ones, but I'm very interested in gender work, obviously, just because I feel like there's so much work that is being done, but there's still a lot that can be done. So I saw the description and I'm like, okay, no, I have to apply for this. And like I said, I was already in Ghana, and it would have been great to go back to Canada after COVID. But I'm like, no, my parents are here and my family is here. And this is great work. This is something I've always been interested in doing, coming back and being providing services and all of that. So I applied, and so that's how I found out about Crossroads. It was through a friend who sent me the job description because they're looking for Canadian citizens or permanent residents. And so I'm like, okay, I qualify. So I applied. I applied and did the interview. So Crossroads, they do the initial screening. And once they do the screening and they see that you qualify, they reach out to the partner organization, and they reached out to that. At that time, it was the Human Rights Advocacy Center. They reached out to the executive director at that time, and they were like, okay, you can move ahead with the CV. So I did the interview with our VMT, the volunteer mobilization team, and the Ghana team, and everything went well. So I started, and it's been uphill since then. It's been really good. So that's how I found out about Crossroads. But the transition was simple because I was already here when I found out, so I didn't have to do all of that packing up and moving from Canada to Ghana. So yeah, that was my experience.
I think similarly, as I said, when I became a Crossroads volunteer, I was already here. So my transition from organization to organization was smooth. And I think those first 3 months really gave me that stepping stone to understand what the expectations were, kind of have a better layout of the lands. But if I think back to when I first was coming to Ghana from Canada, I personally purposefully didn't try and do so much research and so much looking into what life would be like. I did the basics and obviously like safety and trying to understand the culture a bit better, but I didn't want to be searching up photos and like looking into it too much, because I wanted to not have any specific expectations. I wanted to come and really just rawly embrace it. And I think that is really good for Ghana. Maybe that's not good for everywhere you go, but I really benefited for Ghana because people here are so open and so friendly and kind, and really open to teaching you about the culture and helping you figure things out. But when I came, truly, I came with one suitcase. Even though we were allowed two.
I remember.
I came with one suitcase that was underweight. I was the only one who could just go through all the airports, African world. They didn't charge me extra. Like, I was underweight for everything. I think I had brought like 4 t-shirts, 2 skirts. Like, I really kept it so minimal. And when I think back to that time, I think I just thought like, okay, 3 months, I'm definitely coming home. And also, I'll just make do. Like, I think I just wanted to be simple and figure it out along the way, which I don't recommend for everyone. If you're not that personality type, obviously you need to do more planning. But I think I also, when I first applied to come to Ghana, I wasn't expecting to even get the volunteer position. I wasn't expecting which country I was going to go to, because the way the last organization worked was that you could request one of 3 countries, which was Ghana, Uganda, or Tanzania. And I said to them, I don't have a preference. I don't have a preference where you put me. I'm fine with whatever. And I had just come home from a different trip where I was out west in Canada. So I was kind of in between jobs, in between scenarios. And I wasn't really having a lot of expectations. Similarly, my friend sent me the posting. I applied. I said, send me wherever. I'm open. I'm ready. And it was a very quick turnaround. It was like yes, you've got it, you're going within a month. And then I just came. So I think I just kind of said to myself, I'm going to go dive headfirst into this experience and see how I come out of it, really. And here I am 2 years later.
And
Still here.
and I remember when I met Meghan, I don't think she was expecting to sign on to Crossroads immediately. So after she signed on, she's like, "Can I go back home?" She was like, "Can I go back home?" Because I was supposed to go. I'm like, you know what? Let's see what we can do. So she went home. How long were you gone for?
I went for just 2 weeks.
Yeah, so she went just for 2 weeks, and that's when she brought all her clothes back, because like she said, she didn't have any suitcase. Like she had just very minimal things. So she went back home, and then she brought back all the things because she was staying longer, like for a year.
Yeah.
So, and then even after that, she said this is her second mandate, because after that, I was like, "Meghan, do you want to stay?" She's like, "Yeah, I want to stay, but I don't know." And then I was like, "Okay." So she went back, and then she came back. She's like, "Okay, I'll just do 6 months." I'll just do 6 months. I'm like, you know, exactly. I'm like, you know what? I feel like you'll extend, but let's just do 6 months. That's fine. And then 3 months in, she's like, "Stephanie, can I extend? Can I extend my mandate?" So Meghan, I don't think Meghan, I feel like Meghan is literally an honorary Northern Region resident. She is. And I'll always tell this story. She is a Dagomba woman. I always tell this story because the last time I came with Meghan, I think that was in November, she's like, "No, Stephanie, you have to try this thing." So we went to go buy it, and I think the ladies who were selling were speaking the language. And then she responded back in the language, and they were shocked. And then she told them in the language, "I understood what you said." So I'm standing there and I'm looking at her and I'm so astonished, because how do you know how to speak the language? So I think the experience has been really good.
Yeah.
And it's been good for me to watch Meghan as well, just because of how I met her and then how much she's grown since I met her. And I think, yeah, it's been wonderful.
Yeah, it's really been great for me. And as I said, I dove headfirst in, just ready to embrace anything that came my way. And I think, yes, me going home for those 2 weeks, I had that advantage of already being here. So I knew what to pack for a long-term stay. Okay, about Tamale. Wow. I think that this would be really interesting to contrast our experience of how Rafia sees Tamale versus how I see Tamale.
Yeah.
So I want to let Rafia start. She is a true Tamalean. She lives here. She speaks the language among multiple other languages. And as she often says to me, I know my people. She knows her people. So I think she can speak to that.
Tamale. I think almost every foreign person, the first question I always ask of them is, what were their first impressions of Tamale? Because I know how I see Tamale. I just want to know what you think. If without any prior knowledge, you just come in. What do you think? And so I always describe Tamale as because there's a lot of Dagombas here, I just describe Tamale as Dagomba people's land. So it's like Tamale people, or Tamale is just a very welcoming and friendly place. If you are a foreigner, familiarity breeds contempt. So if you're new here, Tamale is welcoming. It's not so intimidating. Tamale is slow. Tamale moves slowly. This is in contrast to Accra. Accra is quite faster, busier. Everything is intense, to be honest. And Tamale is slow. Tamale is easygoing. I always say Tamale is the best place to retire and come to. It's a bit we have more rural areas as compared to the bigger cities, but Tamale is just, and I had someone who described Tamale as just calm. And I was like, well, that's how you see it, but but yeah, if you ask me, I would always say that Tamale people, it's more about the people, right? Tamale people are very friendly, they are very welcoming, and it has to do with the culture. Dagombes would offer you water and teasets before they even give the household. They'll give a guest food before they give the household. If it's left with one pot of food, they'll give it to the guests, and then they'll sleep hungry. So that's just how Tamale is. Everybody's always ready to help you. I remember one time I was riding my bike and I ran out of fuel. And then you have to push the bike to the nearest fuel station. And the minute people see you pushing, everybody will stop. What's going on? And then they'll scold you, like, why won't you buy fuel? Then they'll be like, oh, women, how did you not know your fuel will not take you here? And then they'll buy the fuel for you. They'll scold you, but then they'll go and get the fuel for you. Everybody's always willing to help. If you have a flat tire anywhere, there is someone who would, but then there's a catch. You always have to greet. Like I said, I schooled in Accra. And so when I'm in Tamale, I have to orient myself to greet everybody I meet, especially elderly people. And then in Accra, people don't care about that. Maybe because I was on campus. Because on campus, I would enter a shuttle, I would greet. Nobody will respond. And then I'll enter maybe a space, I'll enter somewhere and I'll greet. Only maybe the oldest person there would respond. Nobody will mind you. But then in Tamale, if you are passing by and you don't greet, and unfortunately you have to ask for directions, nobody will listen to you. Wow. And so every time I was in Tamale, I had to reorient myself. Then when I go to Accra, I have to tell myself, you don't have to greet everybody. Okay. And so those are some of and I feel like in Accra, like in Tamale, you feel like someone is always watching you. In Accra, nobody can. So Tamale is very, and in Tamale, everybody knows everybody. So if you are going somewhere, just let your parents or whoever has to know, I'm going here. Else before you get there, somebody will call them and tell, oh, we saw you here. Just to emphasize how, and the whole like family system, if people are cousins, they'll call themselves siblings. As I tell you all the time. I tell her, oh, my brother, my sister. She'll be like, I know only 2 siblings of yours. I'm like, oh yeah, they're my cousins, but we call each other brothers and sisters. Yeah, so I hope that gives paints a picture of what Tamale is like. Yeah, Tamale is very calm.
I think so too. I think I would say all similar things. But it's funny because when I first came, I don't think I would have described it as calm. I think, passing through the market, the yellows, the motorbikes, everything was pretty overwhelming for me to begin with. And I felt like there was a lot going on, very overstimulating. And even the way that Dagombas typically express and speak to each other, oftentimes you hear them shouting and you think there is like a massive fight happening. It will be a group of people all shouting. And I think it's something like really bad going on, but it's just excitement, a conversation. They could even just be saying, please get me my water. So casual. So when I first came, that was my impression. Like people are shouting and lots of noise and the market was overwhelming. But now I definitely see the calmness in Tamale. And I think it's kind of a joke I have among a lot of my Ghanaian friends here is like, Ghanaians don't like to rush. They take their time with everything. And I feel like that's really true in Tamale. People they're not in a rush. But I think it's something I really appreciate as well, is I think I sometimes have to tell myself, slow down. There's no rush. Yeah, like get there when we get there.
And then she'll text me, she'll be like, do we have to be there at 10 or Ghana 10?
Yeah, Ghana time
so
is
if
real.
I know where we are going, we have to be on that. I'll be like, 10, not Ghana 10.
Exactly.
That's a good culture shock that I'm still dealing with, is the Ghana time, because it's just so ingrained in me to be early to places, and here that is just simply never the case. Yeah. And I find it really difficult still to get out of the mindset of trying to rush to get somewhere or rush to get something done or rush to speak to someone. Yeah. It's just, it happens when it happens. It will unfold. Yeah. And there's still times where I remember early on in my experience, I had asked a yellow driver to pick me up to bring me to a conference. And he was late getting me, and I was really disappointed, and I really expressed how disappointed I was, because I said, you're going to make me very late. And he was just looking at me like, he was like, Madame, I bet you when we get there, they won't have even started. And I was like, no, this is going to look so unprofessional. Yeah. I'm a part of the conference. I need to, and I think I was 30 minutes late, and no one was even there. And I felt so bad afterward for scolding him on that. But I don't know, Stephanie, for you, like cross-culturally, did you experience many culture shocks like that?
I think the time one is something that I still experience because we just had that conversation yesterday, actually, because I'm here with our program manager and our institutional funding manager. And we we were talking about it. I was walking because we said we were going to be somewhere at 6:30, and I was walking, and Delali said, we're not going to a meeting. You're not going to be late. We're just going to dinner. I'm like, okay, but we said 6:30. We said 6:30. So as we sat down and we were talking, I'm like, you know what? In Canada, we literally walk and eat because we're always in a rush somewhere. So it's either you're late for class and you're eating while you're going to class, or you're late for work and you went out for lunch and you're coming. That's what we do. We're eating in the car, we're eating in the bus. Everywhere we're eating because we're always rushing. Exactly, we don't have the time. So, but in Ghana, when people buy food, they'll get a bowl and they'll sit down and they'll eat, be satisfied, have a conversation before they make their way to where they're going, even if they're late. Yeah, exactly. Self-care. It's a self-care every day, even if you're late. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching like, no, we need to rush and we need to go. And it's been years, but I still feel the exact same way. Yeah. So I don't know if that'll ever go away. And I hope it never goes away because I just feel like punctuality is so important.
Yes.
And even if Ghana will always be late, I want to always be early just because it'll make me feel better. So I will be early even if they're late. Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't shock me anymore, even though it was shocking at first. But I just can't bring myself to be late. It's weird. I can't do it. Yeah.
And even the walking thing, like you're saying, I find so often people are like, why are you walking so fast? What is the rush? And they'll often be like, and in this heat too. You're trying to walk that fast in this heat. Like, calm down, take a break under a tree.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. No, I think it's definitely something that I guess we'll always have to deal with.
Yeah. Is there any culture shocks you've had, Rafia, of dealing with international volunteers or dealing with foreigners? Because I know I'm not your first. So tell me what that's been like.
I think the first was maybe the first one I worked very closely with was Brenda, and it wasn't necessarily a shock because I was expecting it. I always expected people from, I'll just say the Western countries to be like very like all about the business, always on time, doing their work. But I think the one thing that I always saw differently was how do I put this? I don't think I even told you this, but I always thought of, I don't want to say you people, but I always thought of you people as like strict, come do your work, go, no human relations, no like mixing with us.
Right.
And so that was the one thing that shocked me, is that when Brenda and then you, more or less Brenda and even more you, because you are white. So when you came, I thought it would be like you'll try to keep to yourself, because I thought that's how all of you were.
Right.
Like you'll just do your work and then go home. You don't really mix with, and you are very kind, which is not. I'm not trying to be mean, but it's not something I expected. Because I always thought of white people as like no nonsense. They will tell you their mind. If you're being an idiot, they'll tell you you're being an idiot. But then it was very different. Like you were very kind. You were more of like us. Or maybe it's because you were here for long before you came like to Songtava. But you were more like us than even some of us. And so that was one thing that really shocked me. But then another thing I was expecting and I saw is that you're very diligent. Same with Brenda. Very diligent. Even no matter how much they would play with you when it's time to work. Yeah, and then I've learned so much from you guys. So I'm hoping you extend again.
Thank you. That's such a compliment. And I think it's interesting because my first couple of months here in Ghana, I think I was a bit more reserved, but it was more because I was really trying to observe how things were. And that also probably was a bit of a culture shock to me, is how much people play, even in the office. Like, people are really lighthearted, easygoing. They will play with each other. They will get serious and scold each other and then follow it up with something to make each other laugh. And I observed that, and it's also something I've tried to absorb in my daily life. Like, nothing is too serious. We can get our work done, we can do what we have to do, but we can also just joke around with each other, and it doesn't have to be business all the time. So yeah, I think that's something really nice. Okay, what would I tell families who are concerned about their child or family member volunteering? This is interesting. I think I would say that for me, I feel like if your family member, son, daughter, child, is interested in volunteering overseas, first and foremost, you have to understand that that person, like people who are interested in these things, already are probably equipped to some extent to do it, because people don't just wake up one day and say, let me go. It's something that they think about. It's something that's in them. It means they have the interest. It means they probably have some sort of knowledge. And for me, going overseas, doing development work has always been something I've been interested in since I was a teenager. I just kind of felt like maybe I wouldn't actually find that opportunity, and that maybe I would work in the development space from Canada, but then be supporting from Canada. And so volunteering has given me the opportunity to really get that cross-cultural experience. But yeah, since it's been something that's been in me for a long time, and now I've been able to live it out. And I think that aside from all the other things I can say to reassure you, I would say that honestly, if your child is thinking about it, it means they've been thinking about it before, and they already, if they have that interest, if they have that openness, then I think they're equipped enough. And it's just from there talking about, boundaries and safety, but those are also things I feel like apply to no matter where you are in the world, which is something I say to everyone when they ask me, oh, is Ghana safe? Are you safe? What's going on there? I always say, like, you should be exercising caution no matter where you are. Exactly. If I'm at home on the streets of Toronto, I also have to be vigilant, even in my own hometown. Like, you're never going to be 100% safe. You have to be smart. You have to be thinking about what you're doing and not just running around town freely, so I think that that's something that I would say, is that if your child is interested, just have that faith and confidence in them that they've already probably done a lot of the work that it takes to be someone who goes overseas. I don't know if you have something to add, Stephanie.
I think I'd have to agree with everything that you said, especially the part about they've probably been thinking about it. So my experience, like I said, I had always wanted to come back because, like, being a 10-year-old watching TV, I didn't always like watching the commercials where they show the African kids with flies on their face and just like snot everywhere, dried up snot. And I didn't like that because I knew that's not what the reality was. Of course, that's some people's reality, and I'm not stating, like, I'm not trying to act like it doesn't exist, but that's not all Africa is. That's not all Ghana is. So that's one reason why I was so motivated to come back and work in this space, because I know that, yes, the need is there, but that's not all there is. There are great parts of Ghana. Like you said, you have to be cautious everywhere you are. And Ghana is one of the safest countries. Yes, it is in Africa, and yes, it's a developing country, but we just finished elections in December. Nothing major happened. Everybody went about their days, like on December 8th. We were moving like nothing happened. And it's very safe. So if it's safety that you're concerned about with volunteering, just know that. And even with the individual organizations like Crossroads International, we have a security, we have our risk measures. We do a security watch every month. We send it to our headquarters every month so they know what's happening. Volunteers are aware of everything that's going on. And in case of emergencies, we have plans, right? So we're not volunteering on our own. We have support, and no matter who you are, we make sure that you're safe. So, and I'm sure that's the same with other volunteering organizations. It's not just Crossroads. Nobody will let you come to a country that you're new in to be on your own, especially if you are a volunteer. And like Rafiatu was saying, in Tamale and the same in Accra, when they realize that you're a foreigner, they really take care of you. They really want to make sure that you leave and say good things about their country and their hospitality. And they're nicer to foreigners than they are to their own people sometimes. So volunteers love Tamale. Volunteers love Accra. And that's why we have our volunteers who always want to sign on and stay longer because of the great experience that they have. So I would say if you want to volunteer, do it.
Yeah.
Do it. We have our social media handles everywhere. You can ask us questions. You can reach out. Rafiatu is here. Songtaba, we highlight some of our partners. You can research on them and contact them as well if you are interested. But just know that you are not going to be on your own if you ever want to volunteer. We're here to support in any way.
Yeah, and I'm really happy you brought up the point about kind of how people portray Africa and, so to speak, developing countries. I think that with my advice for families, I would hope that a lot of people who are volunteering overseas do a lot of work internally and understanding decolonization, but I think that you as a family member, it should also extend to you. So be also understanding and vigilant in your own educating of yourself of where your family member is going. Don't look at just these articles or forum posts of people saying horrible things about different countries. There is so much more information out there, and I think it's really vital that everyone who is kind of involved in this process understands what it actually means to be an outsider somewhere, what it actually means for me as a white person in a black country. Like those are really important conversations to be having with your family members. And I say that because I also have experience with my family members where they mean so well and they are so excited for me, but I do find the way that they talk about my experience to other people at home is not necessarily reflective of how things are and the work that I'm actually doing. And I really try to be diligent in them understanding, please don't go around telling people I'm helping Africans. Like that is not the conversation. Yeah, like please don't do that because it's, first of all, not accurate at all. Africans don't need my help. Africa is a big continent. I am in a small town in Ghana and I am here learning and volunteering and supporting. And I think that is really, really important for family members to understand. You also have to be doing work and have those conversations with those who are volunteering. Rafia, do you have something you would like to add?
I wanted you to, I think I've asked you, I asked Brenda too, is like, when you decided to come, I think the first thing I asked you was if you missed your family, how you could stand being away from home for such a long time. Like, I want to know, like, when you first broke the news, how was it received that you were coming to Ghana in Africa? I'm curious.
I think my family in some ways always expected I would do something like this because I studied global studies and then I did a post-grad at Humber in international development. So they always knew that I was really interested in this kind of work. So I don't think they were that shocked. But yeah, I think all the typical questions of how safe is it? Where will you live? Like, what are you going to do? Who will be there? Are you going to be moving with security? And I think still to this day, I struggle with having some people understand, I think, especially in older generations, of what it's really like here. Because I think no matter what you say, they still have this image ingrained of how things will be. But yeah, I think they were mostly concerned about all the little details that I didn't even necessarily know at that point. So I just had to try and reassure them and tell them, like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to be fine. And if I'm not fine, I will come home and it will move forward. But I also knew that I wasn't going to a country where I had to be worried about war or like these kind of extreme situations. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I think that concern is valid because Africa is not really displayed in a positive light, to be very honest. We're always seen as this poverty-stricken war, just people that are ready to fight with their rifles up. And yes, it does happen in some places, and and it's great that people are concerned, but sometimes I feel like it has to come from more of a positive place where they're asking the questions and wanting to be educated about what is going on, and not necessarily exactly not making assumptions. And I think that's what volunteering also helps with, because then we have volunteers who now experience the great place that Ghana Tamale is, and they can go back and share with their families and their friends, and hopefully let the family members also want to volunteer. There is no age limit on volunteering. Yes, young people volunteer, middle-aged people volunteer, people that have retired volunteer. So Meghan, your parents can even come and volunteer with Yes, tell them they can come and volunteer with Crossroads as well. We're always open. And yeah, so I think it's nice that you're really being honest with them as well, and letting them know, and hopefully they're sharing those details with their friends as well.
Yeah, I've been doing my best to have those conversations and to try and accurately portray what life is like. And I find sometimes I have to switch between actually addressing the realities as well, because sometimes I speak so fondly of my experience here. I can see people looking at me like, okay, but obviously there's hard times, and there is. I think it's challenging being a volunteer. It's challenging being outside of your cultural comfortabilities. But I think some of my biggest challenges are more personal things. I think other things, like Rafia and Stephanie have both said, that there's such a strong sense of community here in Ghana. A lot of times when I have issues, people are willing to help me out and walk me through it. But when it comes to my challenges as a volunteer, it's more things about I have a tendency to be a people pleaser and want to do really, really, really good work. And then sometimes I'm taking on too much and promising too much about what I can actually deliver as a volunteer. And maybe overworking myself because I feel like I want to be, I've had this conversation with Rafia multiple times, where I want to be seen, not as a staff, but I don't want to be seen as someone who has othered themselves so much. For example, sometimes I will be really tired or sick, or just like I'm exhausted that day. And Rafia will say to me, go home and sleep. And I'll be like, if no one else in this office goes home to sleep when they say they're tired, why would I? And I understand that there's a difference because I'm in this different circumstance, so people see it as, no, you should rest more, you should take more time because you're not used to things here. But I think I pressure myself a lot, and I want to be here as the staff are here and do the same things as people are doing here, and not put myself in a different pedestal or room of what I can do and what I can't do. And I find navigating that to be a challenge, because I sometimes maybe don't give myself the breaks when I should. Yes, I'm admitting it. I'm admitting it.
But I get where you're coming from, Meghan, and I hope Rafia too, you'll understand too, because I think, yes, Meghan needs to rest, but so do you, Rafia, too. And she's not seeing that.
Exactly.
Right? So it's almost as if, yes, we want to build the capacity, and we always talk about how mental health is important and self-care is important. But as volunteers, when we don't see that the staff are doing the same thing, it's kind of hard, because then if we leave, we don't want it to seem like, oh, because we're volunteers, you guys were giving us the easy way out. Then maybe advocate so the staff can also get the rest when they're tired, when they're sick. Because then it feels like, okay, if Rafia too is sick and she's coming in, maybe I have to come in when I'm sick. But if Rafia too is sick and she stays home, then Meghan knows that when Meghan is sick, Meghan can also stay home. So I think as much as we want to advocate for volunteers, we also have to advocate for the staff as well. Because at the end of the day, this is a global world. Everything that we do affects something. So what we are learning as volunteers, when we go back eventually, we need to also pass it on, so that we are letting others know, okay, in this part of the world we do this, in this part of the world we do that. So I think it's a bigger conversation that needs to be had, because yes, we want to be effective and we want to make an impact, and sometimes we focus so much on beneficiaries or the participants in the community that we forget that we need to take care of ourselves as well. Because if the staff are not well and the staff are not strong, how can they be beneficial to those in the community, right? So yes, I see where Meghan is coming from, and Rafia too. I think that's a bigger point. It's not going to end here. It's something that we have to have a larger conversation about, out. And maybe if Hajia Lamna too was here, we could bring it up. So maybe we can continue that conversation and come back on the podcast and see what changes have been made, so we can hold each other accountable. I'll call when I go back to Accra. I'll be like, okay, Rafia, what has happened? Megan, can you tell me something?
Okay, so to that, I think one of the things, like I mentioned, how I was surprised by how she was more like us, is that whole like, when you're sick you still come to work, and I was like, I know you want, like, you're a staff, you're part of us, but at the end of the day you're a volunteer. What does Crossroads say about how you would also take care of yourself here? So if you are not well and everybody can see you are not well, rest. Yes. You don't have to. You can even ask to work from home, because the thing is with here, we always come to work, and so to the point where some of us don't even feel comfortable working from home. So you are probably more used to working from home, so just let them know. And because foreigner, they would allow you. But I think the one thing that both Meghan and Brenda have done so well, and Brenda more because she was here longer than you have been here, is she advocated for everybody. When it was closing, Brenda would go home, and she would tell, "Make una go home." She would tell us, "Look," and with all she was sitting with, when she came, they gave her an office, but she chose to sit with everybody else. And when she sat with us, every time, like, very small pockets of advice, like, take care of yourself. If you are not here, Songtaba would continue to run. And I think I told you when I had the accident, I told you that was when I actually felt it, because I was supposed to be at a program. I was supposed to introduce the chairperson, but I had an accident on the way there. And the chairperson was still introduced. Nothing happened to the program. And I was like, like, I'm worried about that. And I was in bandages. I was trying to get to the program, and then they told me, they were like, rest. The chairperson was still introduced. Everything went smoothly. They didn't need me there. And so it was a huge wake-up call, even though Brenda had been telling us, she tells us all the time, like, take care of you. But then I really saw it then. Because I know there were a lot of things that we would do that she would even come speak with Hajia, like, oh, I think, like, some of your staff are mentally exhausted. And Hajia would be like, oh, do you have any suggestions? And we would see it working. On Valentine's Day, she would advocate for them to give us chocolate. And so, and I think that's one benefit of the volunteer, because it's cross-cultural, right? Exactly. She's bringing practices that are good and can be replicated here, and then she's trying to onboard us with those kinds of practices that make staff happier. And I think it's all part of the experience.
Yes, exactly. I'm so happy to hear that it's all part of the experience. And I think you being willing to accept the recommendations as well is very important, because you can easily just brush it away and say, no, this is not how we do things here. This is what and I think that attitude will not help anybody. So I'm happy that Brenda, I hope you're listening. I'm happy with the impact that you have felt when Brenda came. And she was only here for 6 months, but man, she did a lot of work. And I know Meghan is also doing a lot of work, and we'll say the same things about Meghan as well. So yes, the change is what we want to see. And it doesn't happen overnight. But we just want to see that something is happening, because we all want the same thing. We want to make sure we support the community. We want to make sure the community is supporting themselves, empowering them. We talk about gender equality. We talk about women empowerment, women economic empowerment. We talk about all those things, but we need to practice it ourselves. We need to empower ourselves in our offices. And if something is not going well, how do we talk about it so that everybody can benefit, not just one gender, right? So, yes, I think volunteerism, thank you for sharing that, Rafia, too, because I think volunteerism goes a long way, and it's always not just about the community, but also with the people that we work with every day. Yeah.
Definitely. And I think that kind of leads into another challenge that I would say, is that I do find it sometimes difficult to walk that line of not trying to push my own beliefs and agenda in a new space, in a new culture, versus knowing what can actually benefit the organization and trying to softly introduce it. But I think that it's nice and it's rewarding to hear that you also think that it's been a benefit of us kind of advocating for that. But it's still a bit of a challenge, I think, for any volunteer probably. But it's something that I work in my head constantly. Like, if I have an idea, how much should I be pushing it, and how much should I step back and say, no, it's my time to listen? And that's something that I'm constantly navigating here in Ghana.
I think it was the same with Brenda too. She did mention sometimes she didn't want it to feel like she was imposing because she was from, for lack of a better word, an advanced country, that maybe she knows better. But then, we just decided, I just said, you know what, everything should be a suggestion. It shouldn't be a demand or an order. And I think it worked very nicely because, and every time something was not good, Brenda would call it out, same as Meghan. But then they would also like diplomatically talk about it with who it needs to be discussed with, and like, oh, this is what is happening. I don't think it's right. Like, what do you think we can do to change it? And then I suggest this. And so I think it's been good. We love it though.
No, this is really good to hear, and I'm so happy we're having this conversation because, you know, we're in the same country, but Accra and Tamale can be very far away. And even though we talk on the phone often, there's some things that don't come up. Like, some things don't come up unless you ask, but I'm happy that it's coming up organically right now. And I think that's the essence of volunteerism, because we come in, maybe you come in with an idea of what you want to do. We have deliverables that we have to, and some of these things are not written down, but they're making great impact, right? And I think it's important to share those as well, because organizational culture sometimes can be so difficult, depending on where you are, and some people stop volunteering because of that. So how do you navigate the fine line between pushing too much and knowing when to just step back and listen, right? And I think it's something that we all have to learn. It's a continuous learning. Yes, we have to learn that, because what may work for one person will not work for another. And Songtaba is willing to be open-minded and hear our volunteers out, but not everybody is like that. And sometimes, unfortunately, we have to be okay with it. And then we take our skills elsewhere to try again and see what we can do.
Yeah, I think that that's great advice too, Rafia. The art of suggestion, understanding what do people need and how will it benefit them, and then how to properly and sympathetically have that discussion with them without it sounding like you are all wrong and I am right and I know better because I'm coming from this place. Exactly. I think that for any volunteer, wherever you are, even if you're volunteering within your own country, but you're volunteering in a space with different people who maybe have different beliefs, or maybe there's sensitive beneficiaries there, I think that's such an important advice to carry with you as a volunteer. So speaking of, I think the most rewarding parts of volunteering, because volunteering can also be very rewarding. For me, the most rewarding parts, I would say, as I said earlier, I'm just trying to absorb as much as possible. And I think my personal growth, I can talk a lot about career growth and skills, but my personal growth has been like immeasurable, really and truly. I think I've become a better version of myself through this whole process, and that's because of Ghana, that's because of Tamale, that's also because of my role as a volunteer here. I've just learned so much, and I think being a volunteer means that you are, as we said, like you're not paid, and you're giving up your time and your energy to something, and I've lost my track of thought.
You said it. Personal growth.
Yeah, a lot of personal growth, and I think a lot of that personal growth comes from the fact that you're not necessarily going into it with an aim to receive something in the end. So when you're a staff member somewhere and you know that you're going in, you're doing your hours, you're getting your salary at the end of the day, you're getting your benefits, whatever it is. But this is really just, I'm coming, I'm learning, I'm seeing what happens. And you can really, you can really just take the time to learn from different people and different sectors in an organization, which I think is something that you don't necessarily get to do when you're a full-time staff somewhere. I think that that's something that a volunteer really benefits from. If you're interested in something that you're not necessarily there to do, you have that flexibility to say, hey, can I follow you out to the field and see what it's like to be a communications officer? Can I follow you out to the field and see how your programs are run? Even if it's in a different language, I'm still learning and observing. Even M&E is something that I'm not strong at, but I know that I can go to the M&E officer and ask for advice and for help and kind of get guidance on that maybe I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I was in a specific role in an organization. So I've learned so much, and I think volunteering gives you that flexibility to really absorb as much as possible. And I think anyone who volunteers, you should really take it as that. Really take it as you are a sponge and try and learn and take as much as you can from the experience. I always tell people when they're coming to Tamale and they are kind of like nervous, or they're, oh, how do you find Tamale? What do you think about it? I always say it is what you make it. Tamale and your experience here will be what you make of it. It is, you are in control. If you want to have fun, if you want to meet lots of people, if you want to learn a lot, you are in control of that. That is all there and all on the table as a possibility for you. Rafia, what do you think are the most rewarding things of being a volunteer?
So I agree with you that there are certain things that you can necessarily benefit when you're a volunteer than when you're a full staff. Like for me, I can say I enjoyed being a volunteer more than being a full staff, because being a volunteer, at least for my role here at Songtaba at that time, it was a lot of going to the community, and that's the part of this job that I enjoy the most. I hate the paperwork. But I like being in the communities, having discussions with people, learning about their life experiences and suggestions I can give them to make things better for them, especially with young girls that I work with. I like hearing what troubles them. I like giving them my 2 cents and seeing how they use it, and then it changes something for them. So being a volunteer gave me that, because I was almost always in the communities. That was what I was doing. But then when you're a full staff, you have to divide being in the community with writing reports and preparing budgets and everything. But then when being a volunteer, I think that was the most rewarding part for me, was like always being in the community. And if Songtaba hears this, that doesn't mean firing me and making me a volunteer. But yes, I think that was the most rewarding part for me, was being close to the communities. And with working with Crossroads volunteers, I think I always try as much as possible to be as close to the volunteers as possible, because I always feel like if I find myself in your shoes, I would want me to, like, if I have any issues, if I have any problems, imagine being in a strange country, you don't know anybody, you don't know where to get anything. I would always want someone like me. So that's mostly why I try as much as possible to be close and try to be as helpful as possible, but also to learn a lot. Because you come with very different perspectives, very different experiences. So if I do this way the whole time, and then you'll come and give me an easier way to do it, why not? And there's a lot I've learned from you, from Brenda, a lot. And so I will always be behind you. Aww. Yes. I will be stuck on you. So make sure you extend.
I don't have much to say, because I feel like both of you have said it all. I think being a volunteer is very rewarding, because you're doing what you chose to do, you're interested in. And yes, there are some challenges and we've spoken about them, but I feel like the rewards outweigh those challenges by a mile, because I'll do this over and over again, just because the people you meet, not only the staff, but in the community as well. And the personal growth, professional is important, but I think it's personal growth that will lead you to even excel a lot in your professional ventures as well. So I enjoy it, and it's been rewarding, and getting to travel as well in my role. Like we were in Kijabi last week. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Sometime this month, and then now we're in Tamale, and going into the smaller communities to meet people that you would never meet if you were staff, because you'd be consumed with the work that you're doing in Accra, right? But then with volunteering, you can travel all over the place and get to meet people that you could have never, and then everybody you meet just makes an impact on your life, and you are never the same after meeting people, because something they said will leave a mark in your life. So yes, I think it's been very rewarding.
That being said, I think we're all advocates for volunteerism, and doing it in a way that is sensitive, and educating yourself before you go anywhere, taking the time to learn, absorb as much as possible, and really embrace the new culture and the new experience you will have. And I think you'll see yourself evolve into someone you didn't even imagine. If you're interested in volunteering with Crossroads, I think you can find all of that information on anything crossroadsinternational.org, all of our
CINTL.org.
CINTL.org. Okay, let me say that one again. If you're interested in volunteering specifically with Crossroads International, you can find those opportunities at CINTL.org. You can even give a quick Google of Crossroads International, and you'll find all of our social medias. And I definitely recommend. I don't regret this experience at all. I still remember vividly the time when I met Stephanie and felt that pang of like nervousness and scaredness of what have I just done. I've just signed a contract for a year. I was meant to be here for 3 months, and I cannot speak more into how much it has made my life so much better, and I don't regret a single moment of it. And obviously I'm still here, and I'll probably still be here. So definitely get out there and volunteer in your communities, internationally, wherever your heart desires, but it will be worth it. Thank you for listening.